Today we're here with Peter Caplehorn, Chief Executive of the Construction Products Association, and we're here to have a conversation about the recent Marketing Integrity Group and their report that they published at the end of October. That's all right, all about construction products, information and marketing. Thank you, Peter, for giving up your time. Can you tell us a bit more about that Marketing Integrity Group? Why was it set up? What's the report all about?
Absolutely, Liz, thank you very much, and thanks for inviting us to discuss it. So the Marketing Integrity Group, its origins come from the Judith Hackett review. And in the review, many people will know that she highlighted inaccuracies in product information. And so we took that quite to heart and we discussed it with our members, and we felt that certainly the CPA should be on the front foot with this kind of information, this kind of topic area. So we discussed how we might approach the criticisms in Judith's report. That then formulated itself into a plan of action, and the plan of action we thought was best handled by an independent group. Now, the essence of the group is to look at the problems that Judith found in the arena of products, and primarily that's about the fact that some marketing maybe over-exit a fraction. It maybe says things that aren't clear. And some of the common factors that come up when people are trying to work out issues with products, does the marketing, does the literature, does the technical information actually give you a good appraisal of what the product actually is and does? And quite often that doesn't get achieved. So therefore the job of the group was to try and analyse the problems that we currently see across the market.
Because the report does make a point about marketing people. I think it talks about, selling the superlative, if I can say it properly.
Yeah, that's good. And yes, and that's exactly it. And the common thing that was quoted quite often, we would see a line in an advert which says tested to.
Yeah.
And certainly with regard to fire safety and the great emphasis that we've got on it right now, tested to in a statement that might make you specify or purchase a product is not good enough. Yeah. What we need to be saying, this has been tested to this standard and it did pass, and if you want the results of that test, then please contact us, something like that. But the issues are many and various across the sector. Obviously, people want to sell their products, so they want to make the best information available they possibly can, and sell it in the best way. But the challenge, I think, for the marketing teams, the challenging issues that come across time and time again, is that certainly when it comes to health and safety and fire, we have to be accurate. Yeah. And that's the sort of area that we're trying to get into.
So the Marketing Integrity Group set out to do this research, and I know they did a lot of research with MBS and over 500 responses. So, a good sample, both of people providing information and also the architects and specifiers and contractors who are using that information. But what really jumped out at you as really interesting or noteworthy? What did you learn from that research?
Well, I think the first thing to say is we were really pleased with the result we got, which was, as you say, over 500 people. And also there were separate focus groups with different organisations as well, just to tease out some of the nuances. So I think that really showed us that there was a desire across the industry to talk about this, to communicate, and to discuss the issues and the problems. Now, what stands out, it to some degree, it reinforces the positions that we've held on a number of issues. But also there was some good new territory, if you like, that the report actually identifies. So particularly top of the list is that people are really concerned about substitution. We've had this problem across the industry, as you know, for years and years and years. The issue where a sensibly specified product would then be at some point in the procurement or at some point in the construction process taken out and substituted for another product. Normally because it's cheaper, but it quite often can be because of availability, but it can be a number of other characteristics as well. And the problem that we see time and time again is the substituted product isn't actually a direct equivalent of the original. Something gets lost along the way. Often it might be something that many people would say pretty trivial, so that might be an aesthetic issue or it might be a contextual issue, but quite often, and really importantly, it can also be something that affects the fire performance or the safety performance. And that's the red flag area. That's the area that we've really all got to focus on.
Yeah, okay. So now this research has been published, what happens next then? And actually, in a way, what can marketing people do about this issue of breaking the spec?
Yeah. So I think, right, so we've embarked on quite a long journey here, and many people acknowledge that across the industry. But the next phase for the Marketing Integrity Group is to take on board the comments that were made in the report, so that this is sort of reinforcement of the issues that we've already started to discuss amongst ourselves, and then to distill them into a process, to distill them into a deliverable outcome. And our vision is that we identify a standard. So that's sort of an industry standard for information, whether it be marketing or technical, in terms of the core ethics that drive it. And then what we'll be trying to do is launch that standard to the industry and say, would you please sign up to it? So it's a kind of like the way in which travel agents have a safety net for the whole travel industry. It's kind of like that. So we would want people to sign up to it. We would identify a particular logo or particular mark that they can put on their literature, on their website, or in any other media information. And really there are a number of fundamental checks that we would ask people to go through before they publish stuff. And simply this is about making stuff clear, robust, transparent, and above all, provably honest. And I think the subtext to this is that it comes out of Judith Hackett's report, but clearly the wider industry wants to see this legitimate way of describing products. The rest of the industry not directly involved in products want it as well, because they want to have a mechanism of saying, right, we can definitely rely on that product, or we can definitely rely on this information, and this is the way of proving it. So we see that as the next goal. I'm hoping that we will take not too long, but a few months to get this right. Okay. And then what we were doing, obviously, is to persuade the rest of industry that they need to buy into this new process.
Okay. So you're thinking really about, it's almost like a quality mark, isn't it, for the reliability of the information and the marketing that comes from providers. Yeah. Is this something that CPA will administer itself?
That's the plan at the moment. Now it depends on a lot of things. Clearly it will need a mechanism and needs a process of its own right. We will need to have some way of verification of the process. We will need to have a lot of oversight, a lot of feedback to make this work effectively across the whole industry. But certainly the plan at the moment is I would like CPA to take it on. I think we would need to form a separate entity, if you like, and we also need to be careful about liability, of course, and how that would work. So purely from a business safety point of view, purely from an insurance point of view, it might have to be an entirely separate entity, but we'll see how we go on that one, Liz. I think because we can count on such a great deal of support across industry, then it should just be a process of working out how we can deliver it in a sensible fashion. You know, we have a lot of people within this arena, the fire safety post-Hackett arena. There's a lot of work going on, and one of the things I'm conscious of, I want this to synchronise with other work that's going on in other areas, for instance the competence work. So we don't want to step out of line with a lot of other things that are going on, because I think the one thing that we don't need at the moment in construction is lots of different stuff trying to achieve the same thing. So it's very important.
Yeah. Now I'm going to come back to you on the competence issue, if I may, but before I do so, I think it's a really critical time, it strikes me, for marketers in construction. A post-Grenfell, what sort of messages do you have for marketing people like me, for my colleagues out there? You know, what's your call to action on us as marketing people post-Grenfell?
That's a good question, and I think we have to firstly look at the basics, which is that this is a very sensitive area. Everybody is totally aware of what kicked off this whole process. I think we've had quite a few people commenting on the fact that people aren't tuned in to why we're doing this. I think that's wrong. I think people are absolutely aware we come out of a tragedy that should have never have happened. Yeah. So I think that's crucial. So the sensitivity is the first thing. Understanding how we have got to change as an industry. A lot of people, I think, possibly who are far removed from the discussions that are going on are saying, oh, well, that's not going to affect me and it's not part of my industry. Well, that's wrong. I think it will and should affect everybody in the whole industry. I think we just have to rethink what we are all doing. And we are all in support of an industry which is larger than automotive, larger than aviation, a big chunk of the economy, and it has a big part to play. It produces an enormous amount of built assets. And the issue is that every one of those assets should be safe. It should be safe for the people who use it or safe for the people who live in it. And I think we have let people down badly in producing lots of buildings which provably are not safe. So for marketing people involved in this question, I think it's really important to question what they're really doing, what they're really going after in various activities, to say, okay, could I stand up right now, hand on heart, and say that I'm promoting something which delivers a safe outcome? Yeah. And I think that's the question that everybody's got to ask themselves. Yeah. So much of the industry is driven by custom and practice. In other words, we did it last year like that, so we're going to do it this year like that. This is the time to rethink that. This is the time to say, yeah, custom and practice needs an overhaul. It needs a restart. And we need to really think about things in a different way. And the other element to it that's going to affect the whole of industry is that this is not going to be about lowest cost and fastest time. And clearly we see that driving marketing quite often. Now, I don't think we can perpetuate the industry with those kind of principles still in place. Yeah. We have to go for performance, value for money, and the ethics of the thing has to be driven around those principles, not the cheapest price. And I think so much of the industry is still there with that attitude, and they will have to change.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking a lot, obviously the Competence Steering Group has been working flat out, developing competency standards for all parts of the construction supply chain. Arguably, is there a competency standard for marketing?
Yes, there is. And one of the next jobs for the competence working groups is that we did say in the report that there were several areas that weren't covered. Yeah. And we did highlight a few of them, but I think the goal again for the competence work has first of all got to be, okay, let's identify all the other parts of the sector who've yet to join the conversation. Yeah. So that's clients, that's regulators, and indeed that's marketing as well, because they're all part of the same conversation. And clearly what we've seen from Judith Hackett's analysis is that we are all in the same boat. We're all lacking in terms of provable, reliable, robust competence that will deliver the outcomes that we have got to be seen to be delivering. It's as simple as that.
You may have answered my next question really, which was about whether you felt that this industry is well served by marketing, and if not, how can it improve? I think there are some bits that are really good, but I think there are some bits that are really lacking. And I think that the challenge always for marketing is to fulfil the brief, but it's also to see the other side of the coin. And when I think about how certain things, say, are marketed to architects sometimes, they're completely off pace. They're completely wrong in terms of engaging somebody in the right way to make an influential decision. And I think the crucial thing for me is to say, right, okay, we have got to get on board with the new processes, but we've also got to understand the various elements across the industry and see it from other people's points of view. I think that's really challenging. So much in the construction industry is about the siloed perspective. Yeah. And I think what this process is showing us is that the days of the siloed, we've been saying it for years, I know, but I think the days of the siloed industry have got to go. I think also the days where marketing just did its thing and technical did its thing and the two didn't talk to each other,
Absolutely.
Those have got to be over. I mean, I've always felt passionately that marketing people should be highly technically aware and competent and need to really understand what it is they're talking about.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, in fact, in our products competence analysis, we actually separated that out in terms of those are two areas that need work. So in other words, we've got the technical and we've got the marketing elements, both of which need to understand exactly how products work, but from both perspectives.
Yeah, they should be sat side by side.
Yeah, completely. And when we sort of look at the perspective of how this lot has got to work, it is about using new technologies, new processes, new ways of doing things that will help in that way to bring people into one conversation. Really important.
Interesting. So now, obviously, a key thing that came out of the Hackett review was this concept of the golden thread. And now there's a lot of confusion over the golden thread. I'm certainly picking that up from people I'm talking to. Would you like to explain really what is the golden thread, and actually with a relevance to sort of how does marketing and communication play its part in that?
Sure, Liz. I'm slightly irritated, shall we say, being as somebody who was in the review group for Judith Hackett. I was there, if you like, at the outset, so I think that I can talk with some sort of confidence. Now, so the essence of the golden thread was to use digital technologies to ensure that we have one consistent piece of reliable information running from the very beginning of a project right the way through. So that includes procurement, it includes construction, and of course it includes the occupational stage. Now that I think is a fairly straightforward concept, and it's something that uses the technologies that we've been developing maybe over the last 10 years or so. But we do see that actual BIM and digital information and the aligned technologies are not universal. We have certainly some big gaps in the product arena. We have some big gaps in some of the process areas as well. But the idea of saying, right, when we start a project, we have a digital set of information, and that digital information is continually upgraded, continually updated, and is reliable, and is one version of the truth. And so we don't get any of this debate about, well, what does everybody mean, or what's going on, or anything else. It's all very, very clear. So that is, in a few words, exactly what the golden thread is.
So marketing and communication professionals can be part of that to make sure that that information is accurate, and indeed can draw upon that. I mean, what a resource.
So, exactly. So for me, the beauty is the fact that you for marketing, you can go back to that one version of the truth at any stage during the project's life, and you can say, right, this is where we're at. Now, and then you use that for your reference material going forward. And I see that as being a really large plus in terms of you don't need to debate people's opinion over what you're talking about.
The report talks about how the group will develop some recommendations, potentially by the end of this year, which is not far off. That might be a little tight. Fair enough. Okay. What do you think will be in those recommendations?
Well, I think when we say it's a bit tight for this year, yes, it is, because everybody's got day jobs and everybody's a volunteer as well. So we quite understand that. But nonetheless, we do have some really founded ideas already in terms of what the recommendations should encompass. Now, without trying to prejudge the working group, what that's about is laying down some clear rules for people in terms of, right, when you are producing marketing material, when you're producing technical information, it should follow the following core ethics and principles. And I think that's what we're trying to get to. So it's laying down a process that in principle is really clear to people.
Is this beyond what we would normally expect to do in terms of compliance with advertising standards, requirements, all of that sort of thing? Or are you just restating?
No, I think it's on top of that, and not being an expert in that kind of area. But what I can be fairly confident about is this is about the essence of the output. So, in terms of explaining a technical position, if you like, explaining a technical standard, explaining testing or certification in very simple, straightforward, clear terms that most professionals would understand, or most people in the technical arena would understand. I think that's the core of it.
Okay, so it doesn't stop a product manufacturer or a marketing agency actually finding that competitive edge in terms of how they promote their product. No. It's not stopping that creativity in any way.
No, in fact, we wouldn't want to stop that creativity. But there's a point. So that to me, that's the hook that gets people interested. That creativity that you say, oh wow, I didn't see that before. That's great. But then within that, the next stage is the description or the innuendo, if you like, that comes from the visuals or comes from the graphics, shows you the truth. It doesn't start to take you off down a path which will mislead people into thinking that a product does something that it doesn't do.
Yeah. And as you say, perhaps a clear understanding of that testing and certification process. That was one of the things that jumped out at me at that report, is how few people really understand that testing and certification process, which we all entirely rely on.
Well, we do, and it's a challenging area, and it's particularly challenging because, again, other parts of the review have shown us that we actually don't have enough knowledge even, and we don't have enough testing, or not, possibly not the right tests, or not the right interpretation of those tests in how we apply them to the built environment. One of the challenges we've got going forward is the fact that quite often we're talking about products, but in the completed building we're talking about a collection of products, an assembly of products that all have to work together to deliver the performance that we want. And so one of the further challenges that we've got with all this discussion is, okay, so how do we take the situation from each individual product into the arena where they would be incorporated into a building where they've all got to rely on each other, they've all got to join up technically, and how do we describe that particular sort of scenario? And I think that's one of our next big jobs, is to try and figure out how that works and how that's going to go forward. But we've got to start somewhere.
No, that's good. I like the idea of that collaboration would be enormously beneficial. So if I may, my last question was really about post-Grenfell. I mean, we're facing the phase 2 of the inquiry. The public inquiry starts next year. Yeah. So that is going to be a series of witnesses in the inquiry process, all from the construction sector, from all parts of the supply chain, talking about what happened at Grenfell Tower. And I assume that a lot of that will also be reported in the national media. I mean, personally, I think this industry is in for a long period of some very negative publicity, and that worries me. What do you think we should be doing now to prepare for that? How do we mitigate that? What would be your advice to the wider industry?
I think that's very tricky, actually. And yes, I think your analysis is spot on. Our focus has always been looking forward rather than looking back. Because actually that's a matter of fact. What happened is truly regrettable, but it's still a matter of fact. And the job of the inquiry is to actually identify exactly what happened and how we got to that disastrous situation. But going forward, preparing ourselves, I think what we've got to say is that ever since the disaster happened, an awful lot of the industry's resources have been put to figuring out what we can do better, how we can do things in a much more straightforward way that will deliver the performance that people expect. The way I always phrase it is the fact that we, the construction industry, we have lost the faith of the general public. So we have got to rebuild that. And it will only be done in provable small steps as far as I'm concerned. And so a lot of the work that we've been doing, we can point to and say, this is entirely in keeping with that process of saying, we're never going to let this happen again, and we are going to make sure that the industry does change for the better. And that's about competence, it's about delivering performance, it's about being open, transparent, robust, and above all, sticking to the maxims that have put this industry at top of the tree all over the world, i.e. we do construct really good buildings.
Yes, we do.
You know, we've got a great reputation in this country. The only problem is that quite often we let ourselves down badly, by building buildings which actually are back to the cheapest and the quickest. And that isn't necessarily the right answer.
You know, it's really interesting because there was a very good piece of work done by Ipsos Mori, which looked at how you rebuild trust in different industries, be it financial services, of course, you know, all the problems they've had, other sectors. And one of the key things that comes out time and time again is about consistency. If you are consistent, then that helps to rebuild trust. And we're not consistent. We do superlative, wonderful buildings, and then we have a Grenfell. You know, it's crazy, the range.
But what I would say to that is that there are the same drivers causing the issues that we've got within the industry as there are that create the fantastic buildings that we can see. So when you look at how the industry works in detail, you can see all those mechanisms working, and you can also see solutions. But the issue is that we've not had the will universally to actually see the right path and adopt it. We've basically gone for cheap and cheerful, and we've gone for the high market, and that's why we've got that huge diversity.
So 2020 is our big year of change. 2020
certainly needs to be, and again, I think that's probably another message that I'd like to get out there. This isn't an option. This is not optional. A change is necessary, and if the industry is going to go forward and be successful, and as I said, it's a big industry with lots of employment, lots of potential. It needs to embrace the changes that we can see coming, and it needs to focus and figure out what the response is going to be.
Exciting times ahead.
It is.
Peter, thank you very, very much. Appreciate your input. Thank you.
No problem at all.